I think only 1 in 10 consumers has ever received a handwritten note. So the question is, would you want to be in the pile of emails that people receive a day, or in the thin stack of handwritten notes they receive a year?
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of What's Working in E-commerce. I'm your host, Eagan Heath. I'm the owner of Caravan Digital. We're a digital marketing agency for direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands. I'm very excited for our guest today. He is the founder and CEO of Handwritten, written spelled with a Y, and I'll let him tell you all about what they do. David, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on. David Wachs.
Eagan, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you've got to describe this. So I was just talking to you about how I use your very service for some very cool customized direct mail, but I want the listeners and the viewers to hear you describe it. What is Handwritten? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so Handwritten is the largest provider of automated handwritten notes in the world. We currently have 175 robots. Each of these robots has holds a real pen, a Pilot G2 ballpoint pen, and we write out notes at scale on your stationery. We then write out the envelope. If you have a special insert you want, such as a gift card to Starbucks, we can insert that, or your own coupon or whatever it might be, and then we mail it with a real stamp. So we've been doing this 9 years now. Last year we did over 2 million notes. This year, hopefully closer to 3. Yeah, we're hopeful, I believe, the largest in the world.
That's absolutely excellent. I'm going to pull it up and share on screen here if I can, just so people can see it. And then we'll kind of describe for the listeners as well. So for anyone who's not catching this or hasn't seen this before, the person who receives this message, then it looks like a handwritten note. They can't tell the difference, but it was written by a robot. I love the animations, by the way, David, on your website here. This is at handwritten.com, written with a Y. And boy, it is just so fun. And so you could put in a whole list. You can do sort of potentially, cold outreach. You could do remarketing. You could do all kinds of things. So in the agency space, I was just telling David, we do this sometimes for cold outreach to potential clients. We send this as, anniversary notes for our clients and other sort of thank yous and things like that. And sometimes even for me, just with everything I have going on running the agency, it can be easier for me to just do this. You guys take care of it. Handwritten sends the note for me, rather than I've got to actually physically handwrite a note, go get a stamp, go mail it. And like you said, you guys can do this at scale. So this is just the coolest darn business, David. And I'm really excited to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. And you touched on some stuff. I don't want to turn this into an advertisement, but we now have a birthday card and anniversary card automation system. So you could just upload that info and it's kind of one and done. You don't have to worry about it from then on. And then we also, and I'm happy to talk about this later, we have a Shopify integration. So you can just automatically send notes when people hit certain thresholds in Shopify. And that's under active development too.
Really amazing. So great, all kinds of great integration, all kinds of great automation. As we were chatting before, I was sort of asking you about your story, and then I rudely interrupted you because I was like, wait, let's get this on recording. So tell us a little bit, you're the founder here. What's the story behind Handwritten and these robot written notes?
Yeah, so prior to Handwritten, back in 2004, I started a text messaging company, originally for real estate. There was no Zillow, there was no iPhone back then. So if you drive by a house and the flyer box was empty, you were out of luck. So we provided a service where we'd hang a sign from the real estate sign. It would say text 30364 home to 30364 and you get info on the house. We were the first ones to do that. And then I quickly pivoted out of that because dealing with real estate agents is a bit tough. And so we moved into restaurants, nightclubs, and then eventually e-com. So Sam's Club, Office Max, Abercrombie and Fitch, Toys R Us, Auto Trader, a number of large brands. We were doing over 1 million messages a day for these brands. And what I realized was we were kind of part of the noise. Everybody was getting 135 emails a day. The average office worker spending 25% of their time just managing their inbox. Then you add the thousands of text messages they send and receive a month. Now you're talking about Twitter, Facebook, Slack, Teams, all the rest. It's too much. And however, when you receive a handwritten note, not only do you open it, not only do you read it, but you often keep it and put it on display. And I've got examples I can share of that. But handwritten notes hold a special part in everybody's hearts because they're not considered to be replicable and automatable. So that's what makes this so powerful. I mean, we've had clients call us saying they have their customers call in crying when they get the handwritten notes, which I think was a part of COVID. People felt very lonely. But yeah, that's kind of why I started it. And then when I sold the last company, I went to write handwritten notes to my employees and customers, and my hand cramped up and all the typical stuff. And I just gave up. And that's when I started Handwritten.
Wow, love it. So from text message, SMS to true offline, let's go where the attention is a little less scarce. I love that.
Yeah,
So cool.
I've been in the messaging space now since '04, I guess.
Yes, but such different ends of the spectrum. This is just
Mhm.
fascinating to me. This might be an odd question, David, but did someone teach you to write handwritten notes someday? Oftentimes people say like, their mothers made them write thank you notes for gifts. Have you seen the power of handwritten notes? And, did you have some history with it where you knew if we could do this at scale, this would really be a big deal?
Well, I always like receiving them. I like sending them, but I never did. When I was a kid, of course, my parents made me send thank you notes for birthdays and that type of thing. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where it all started. And I just saw there was a gap and a need for this. Um, and that's literally what it was. And then when I was at my last company, I'd sell it. Every time I'd get a handwritten card, I'd put it on the display on the bookcase behind me. And it didn't take me long to turn around and get inspiration for the venture from that.
Wow, that's great. And just what, you know, I'll try to dig out an example I have here, and maybe if you
Yeah.
have some, you could hold them up too. But for people who haven't seen these, the it looks like it's by a person. If you just received one of these, you'd have no idea. There's even almost like ink smudges and uneven things, and so it's like it's not just like font and it's like a cursive thing. It looks like a person's handwriting, and there's all kinds of
Yeah.
different people you can choose. How can you? You don't have to spill the secret sauce, but just
No,
how do
no.
you guys do this?
So when we started back in 2012, I'm sorry, 2014, we used a auto pen robot, which is a kind of an off-the-shelf machine. You could buy it from a company in Virginia. But we realized that the quality there was limited and the scalability of our service was very, very difficult to scale using those auto pens. Oh, there you go, our sample pack right there. Yeah, I have a note here. I don't, my background is kind of screwing it up. But
Oh yeah.
the way we do it is when we started, we had all these fonts from the AutoPen company, and some of those we replicated once we designed our new robot. And now we run our own robot that has our own software that we can kind of control it in a much more realistic fashion. And underlying it all is a font engine. We kind of take the best of open type fonts, but if you were to take a font and write it with a handwriting robot, you'd end up with bubble text because fonts by default are, or by definition, are outlines. So we have some secret sauce that converts the outline to the centerline stroke to make it look authentic. So some of the stuff we steal from open type fonts, that's contextual alternates, which adds randomization to the characters, and then ligature combinations. So how do two L's look together? How do two T's? Do we cross two T's with one crossbar or two? All those types of nuances are taken into account in the font. And we also randomize the characters in the font so that not two O's look the same or two L's, etc. That's step one. We also vary the left margin so that because people don't write perfectly down the line, we don't make it crazy. Like there's a competitor out there of ours that makes it nuts where every line is like an inch back, an inch
It's a
forth.
little too jarring, maybe.
Yeah, nobody would write that. Instead, we're
Uh-huh.
talking millimeters of difference or less than millimeters of difference, but just enough so you realize that the writer was trying to write straight down the line, down the page, but they weren't exact. And then we do the same thing on interline spacing. So one line is a little bit farther from another, and then the next line might be a little closer. They're trying to stay uniform, but they're not uniform. And certainly they didn't write on a lined piece of paper. The last thing we do, and this is relatively new, is we now bend the text ever so slightly, warping it line by line, as people don't write perfectly straight across the page too. So between those three additional filters we put the copy through after the text, the character randomization, contextual alternates, ligature combos, all that, we end up with a very lifelike appearance. And then on top of all that, we have a lot of clients that create their own handwriting styles, and those just look phenomenal because we're able to, they're the latest and greatest technologies of handwritten. I'm also not used to seeing those styles. And, I look at these all day, every day, so I can tell they're ours. But when a celebrity uses us and we replicate their handwriting, I mean, I see it coming off the robot and I can't believe it when it's in my hand. Or even if we just replicate the signature, it looks so authentic, because signatures we handle a bit differently than the text of a note itself. We kind of consider a signature a drawing. So yeah, that's kind of how we do it. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. I'm tempted here to just keep asking you about your business. I want to see all the robots in action. I want to know how you're doing this, but we should probably get to how this applies to e-commerce, but just so cool. I'm trying to picture all those robots in there handwriting notes all day. And like you said, you guys have put in a lot of thought to basically use computers to mimic the idiosyncrasies of how humans do things. So there's just something even poetic there. I guess I'll turn to the e-commerce though for now, because that's our topic for today. If somebody's selling, through their website, maybe make the case a little bit of, this is obviously a high level of personalization. This can come right from the founder. You don't have to sit there and sign every one, but what are some use cases you've seen, and just, why should direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands be thinking about this kind of, personalized handwritten direct mail?
So what I will say is, and what I preach is sending handwritten notes with an I, not with a Y. If you want to use us or you want to use another vendor, feel free. What I will say to all listeners is that you are not unique. There are a million companies. There's a million companies that do what Handwritten does. There's a million companies that sell products similar to yours or alternatives to you. They could either find another, if you make eyeglasses, they could find another eyeglass company. They could go to Alibaba and make their own. And because of that, we all need to return to a culture of gratefulness. Being grateful that they sought out your solution, that they did their research, that they clicked your banner ads or Googled you or whatever they did to get to you. You have to be grateful for that in this day and age. Furthermore, the cost of retaining a client or reselling to a client is much, much less than attracting a new client and paying cost per acquisition again. So if you can take a second bite of the apple, that's very, very valuable. And furthermore, e-commerce brands in some ways have the leg up compared to traditional brick and mortars on the personalization game, because you have their address and you have all their data. So just to give you an example here, we work with a perfumery out of France. It's a very high-end perfume, and they're sold in a department store in Phoenix, Arizona, where I am. And I went into that department store with my wife, and I was showing my wife the perfume or the cologne, and I was saying, this is a brand we work with. And the department clerk came over and said, may I help you? I said, well, I was just pointing out the brand because we do your automated notes. And she said, well, they're not automated. I have to write my own. And the in-store clerks had to, at the end of the day, sit down and write their own notes, which flip of the coin if they're going to do it or not, right? Like they got busy with other tasks, merchandising, cleaning, closing the books for the day, whatever. But online sales, that's not an issue. And you have the opportunity to make a true impact of personalization at scale that these in-store retailers don't. And it can be very, very impactful. Beyond just thanking, and I do kind of preach the full stop thank you, which is just thanking people, not asking for anything, just thank them, because sincerity goes a long way. But if you're able to stay in touch with them over the course of a year, and I'm not talking every week email or handwritten notes to them. What I'm saying is, when it's their birthday or anniversary of purchase, or if they've done multiple purchases with you, then send them a follow-up note or a Christmas card or whatever. I mean, there's a couple little touch points throughout the year that can really make a big impact. We have a client, they're a dog food brand, and Unfortunately, when the pet passes away, they use us to send handwritten notes to the owners, you know, expressing their condolences, et cetera. And that goes a long way in forging that brand, so that when that owner buys a new pet, hopefully they'll use that service again. So there's a lot of ways to do this, but I would say, if I had to sum up my ramblings here, I'd say you'd want to stay in touch 2 to 4 times a year via handwritten notes. One
Wow.
after the first purchase, maybe anniversary purchase, maybe birthday card and holiday. Those are kind of the big touch points just to stay top of mind. And if you're wondering what the impact of this is, please visit our website, handwritten.com, and there's a resources tab. And then if you click there, there's an option to download the consumer outreach survey. And what we did last year is we did a poll of 2,000 consumers. None of these consumers had any idea who Handwritten was, but we polled consumers and we asked them a bunch of questions about what does it mean? Do you feel appreciated by your brands? What types of outreach have you received from brands, et cetera? And what we learned was people, by and large, do not feel appreciated by their brand. Handwritten notes are only used a fraction of the time by brands. So I think only 1 in 10 consumers has ever received a handwritten note. So the question is, would you want to be in the pile of emails that people receive a day, or in the thin stack of handwritten notes they receive a year? From anybody, from family. So that's number one. Number two is, what are great ways to do consumers feel appreciated? No. What would make you feel appreciated? The number one way, surprise, is a handwritten note. What happens when you feel appreciated? Our data shows that people buy more, they buy more frequently, they buy higher ticket items, and they refer more. So all the good stuff. And the cost of this, it's not free, and it's certainly going to be more than a printed postcard or flyer or something, junk mail piece, as we write on nice thick stock and that type of thing. But the cost of $3 a card, even if you just do it once a year, can make a tremendous impact on retention and customer lifetime value.
Yeah, and that's the name of the game. We've certainly preached that here on this show, so I appreciate you talking about that, David. Of
Yeah.
owned growth, it's not getting easier to advertise. How do you get more bites from the apple, like you said? How do you increase customer lifetime value? And just think about that experience of how many times have you gotten a handwritten note from the founder and or CEO of a company that that you patronize like that. That's a really special thing that people do not forget. And so it can have your signature on it. It can have your logo on it. I know you were mentioning you guys are going to have an option to even have foldable now. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So for years we've offered folded. So we have flat cards that you can customize. So you can put your logo, your image, all that now. And then we have folded cards that were not customizable. They were just generic, where you would have to work with a designer here to have a folded card that was customizable. But as of yesterday, and this is recording, a few months ago from when you're listening, as of yesterday, you can now design a folded custom card. So pretty much all the options are at your fingertips there. So, and then, some of these things I was talking about, purchase thresholds and birthdays and anniversary purchase, all that's very doable via our Shopify plugin, which is free to download. And you can sign up at handwritten.com for a subscription, or you could prepay through us to bring that cost per note down to a very reasonable level. So there's a lot of ways to kind of make this affordable if you're doing volume.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask too about that piece of that integration, that automation. Obviously, people are putting in their shipping information. If you're shipping products to them, you can then use that, I assume, key off of that. And
100%.
without you as the founder or the person working there touching anything, these can just go out right to people, thanking them for their purchase, maybe telling them about something else. What a great idea. What a cool thing.
It's funny. We don't, like most people, we don't practice what we preach, but we started sending swag boxes to clients that prepay for $1,000 or more of our service, and kind of our higher end clients. And so we started this. I talked to my team about it. They implemented it. We sent out one swag box, and wouldn't you know it, they posted a full post to LinkedIn about it after one. So, this stuff works. People really appreciate when they're appreciated, and that's what we help you do. We help you generate a return on relationship. So that's kind of the name of the game is, we live in such an entitled culture now. People really feel good when you actually appreciate them.
And that automation piece, I think that will really appeal to our listeners and viewers. People are used to tools like Klaviyo for email, Attentive and others for SMS, or Klaviyo for SMS of, it's talking to what the system's doing. One thing I wanted to pull up too, you didn't mention is, for some people, if they're on WooCommerce or other systems, sometimes I just look in Zapier and I see Handwritten connects with Zapier. So if you're on WooCommerce or another platform, presumably you could do order happens in WooCommerce, send a particular note through Zapier. So whatever system you're on, like, you can really automate handwritten notes to your customers with your signature, your logo,
we're proud
everything.
to be on Zapier, and then we're also on a system called Make. I don't know if you know about Make, but Make is super cool. So if you haven't checked out Make, check out Make. And then we're on a number of others, Salesforce and the rest.
Have you heard of, are people using this, what we would call top of funnel as well? Of someone hasn't even bought yet, and maybe we're doing, prospecting direct mail. Is that a use case you've seen as well?
It is. So I would say you need to be smart about it because it can get expensive. I mean, everything we do has first class postage. So it's a 66-cent stamp now. So forget the cost of our service. Just multiply the number of people you're hitting by 66 cents. It gets spendy. But what we offer on our website even is you can circle an area on a map and then pick all the residences in that area that meet certain criteria. So for like realtors or furniture stores, mortgage brokers, whatever, you can target people in a geography. And then now we have the same feature, but for businesses. So you can circle an area on a map and say, send this to every dry cleaner or law firm or restaurant, whatever. You can pick those criteria and then send out those notes. So, or you could just upload a list and we can do it that way. For instance, we have solar panel installers that every time they install a rooftop, they then blast out within a half-mile radius of the installation to everybody saying, we're so sorry, we're disrupting the neighborhood with our trucks, we're installing another solar roof. And they frequently sell more roofs that way because it's such a great way to get the word out, and then people stop by the installation and get to meet with the team. So it's very, very powerful. It is a little expensive, but what we find is the ROI. So for instance, with car dealerships, they used to send out printed mailers. When they switched to us, they saw a 27-time greater response rate, 27, so 2,700%. When they adjusted for cost, it was still a 7 times greater ROI because these things just get open and read, versus ripped up before being opened. So I mean, they are used for prospecting, but you have to kind of really sharpen the pencil before you do it.
Yeah, that's great. And I should say too, is for agency owners and other service people, if you're selling services that are thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, it's a no-brainer. It's a great option.
I had a SEO company send us one of those video mailers. I don't know if you've seen them. They're like a cardboard folder. When you open it up, there's a little LCD screen on the inside, and it played some drivel marketing message that was, I didn't even listen. It bored me, sentence one in. But all I could think when I received this was, A, they didn't know who I was because I'm the handwritten note guy. They should have appealed to that. But more importantly, this thing was freaking expensive. So what type of margins were they planning on making off me if they could afford this super expensive mailer? Number two, it was very distracting. I just wanted to know how it worked, not what it was and not what the person was saying. And those were kind of the big ones. And also it was bad for the environment. So bad that they said you could ship it back to them when you're done watching it, so that it doesn't end up in a landfill. And I thought you could have such a more impactful or same impactful message if you just sent a handwritten note. Somebody would actually read it. They'd focus on the message, not on the medium. Meaning, oh wow, this is a video. Let me take it apart and figure out how the little computer inside works. instead they'd focus on what you're trying to say to them, not on the distraction. So I just think people jump through all these gimmicky hoops when what people really want is connection and a little bit of time dedication. And when you send a handwritten note, you're really committing time because people think you took the time to sit down and handwrite it. Now more than ever, especially because of all these like Apollo IO systems and SalesLoft and all the rest that are sending regular emails, not MailChimp style emails or Klaviyo emails, but an email that looks like you, Eagan, sent it to me. Those are all being AI'd out the wazoo. So those lose their value too. And now it's back to phone calls, which are convenient for the caller, but not the callee. I would call you when it's a good time for me, not when it's a good time for you. So that's why they're so annoying if they're real and they're not just some telecall or whatever. But handwritten notes don't have that issue of being considered annoying or interruptive. They're just a gift of time.
That's beautiful. I recently finished reading Subprime Attention Crisis. And one of the points in the book is there was sort of this abstraction made as the digital advertising landscape was created of an impression. We've commodified an impression, but really an impression on Facebook is different than an impression on Google, than YouTube. And even if we're thinking, I saw the subject line in my email, I saw the text in my SMS, and then I saw something handwritten that I received at home. To call each of those one and equate them is really not correct. And I think what you're saying is right. If this one's an emotional connection, it's not an irritation, and people really are impressed by it. So obviously I'm just a huge fan. I love what you're saying here, David.
And I know this isn't this isn't going to be e-tail specific, but we have a piano tuner, and he's in your house once a year to tune your piano. You only need to tune a piano once a year. He then sends you a handwritten note through Zapier. A year later, when he returns, that handwritten note is often still standing up on the piano. So not only is it open, not only is it read, it literally stands up because it's folded, and it's still there. That is real estate you cannot buy. I cannot buy a Google ad to appear at the top of a piano, right? I cannot buy a Google ad to be in the fanciest room of your home. Coming from the text messaging space, people will read those texts, but then they'll delete them or it'll get buried in the text. I'm not going to print out a text message and scotch tape it to the piano, or print out an email and scotch tape it to the piano. Handwritten notes are very unique there. And, we've seen this, like I said, when we send out the swag boxes, people photograph them and they put it on LinkedIn. We've had clients that have called their brands crying, like I mentioned, and coupon redemption rates are through the roof. We work with one e-tailer out of Canada that makes bespoke suits. So you get your measurements done, and then they'll send it to China, get a suit made, and ship it to you. Every year they use us for their Christmas campaign, and they send a coupon code in that, and their redemption rate on those coupons is 3 to 5 times greater than any other coupon they do all year. And that's just because people notice it and take action.
That's a good call out for attribution of how do you measure the ROI on this of coupon code. I imagine you could do, I don't know if people do QR code or even just specialty links and things like that.
We haven't advertised it yet. It's not on the website, but maybe by the time this publishes, we now offer unique QR codes so that we can track back exactly who's snapped it. So if I send out 500 notes, each with a different QR code, and I know one went to Eagan Heath, when Eagan Heath snaps his QR code, I'll know somebody, at least the person that received Eagan's note, scanned it, and then I can enter that into a separate flow within Klaviyo or something else.
Wow, that's just phenomenal. I was also thinking of the old direct response school of Dan Kennedy and Gary Halbert talking about people open their mail over the garbage, and so if it's business class, if it's just kind of stamped mail with the prepaid postage, it's kind of that's junk mail versus these handwritten with stamps on them. I'm imagining that open rate is just so much higher. So absolutely love it. Yeah. Anything else to share, David, or anything else you think people should hear?
No, I mean, again, I really just preach being thankful. So thank you so much for having me on your show. pick up that pen and write an actual handwritten note and see the difference it can make. And then if you want to automate that, reach out to a company like Handwritten. We'd be happy to help you. And if you want to see those samples, feel free to visit handwritten.com, click the business tab, and then you can request a sample kit from us, and we'll get that right out to you. And then, of course, we will follow up doing our due diligence, our job. But we'd be happy to send you a sample kit for no charge.
Yeah, love it. I definitely recommend people check this out. We've been using it for our clients and people love it. And they say, thank you for the handwritten note. And so check it out. It's handwrytten.com, handwritten, spelled with a Y instead of an I. David Wachs, thank you so much for coming on and sharing what's working in e-commerce.
Thanks, Eagan. Pleasure.